There's something deep within us, an ancient pull toward the unknown, a whisper in the shadows of history that refuses to be silenced. For as long as humans have walked the earth, we've been drawn to the divine, to those moments when the veil between our world and something greater seems to thin. Sacred sites, forgotten relics, and the echoes of rituals lost to time, they all tell a story, one that's been buried, erased, or deliberately hidden. But why? What secrets lie just beyond our grasp, waiting to be uncovered? Imagine standing at the edge of a crumbling temple, your fingertips brushing against symbols carved by hands that vanished centuries ago. The air hums with the weight of something unseen, a presence that defies explanation. This isn't just history, it's a mystery, one that's been passed down through whispers and warnings, through fragments of texts and artifacts that shouldn't exist. From the labyrinthine tombs of Egypt to the uncharted depths of the Amazon, every corner of our world holds traces of the divine, but they're never as straightforward as they seem. There are codes within codes, layers of meaning meant only for the initiated, and the more we dig, the more we realize these aren't just stories, they're clues. That's where our journey begins. Over the course of this exploration, we'll uncover 30 of the most enigmatic tales tied to the hidden divine, each one a piece of a puzzle that spans continents and millennia. We'll delve into civilizations that vanished overnight, leaving behind only cryptic monuments. We'll examine artifacts that defy logic, objects said to hold power beyond human understanding. And we'll confront the lingering questions. Were these divine encounters real? Were they misremembered, or were they deliberately obscured? The answers might unsettle you. They might challenge everything you thought you knew, but one thing's certain, by the end, you'll never look at history or the divine the same way again. Some mysteries refuse to stay buried, and few artifacts embody that truth like the Ark of the Covenant. Described in ancient texts as a golden chest radiating divine power, capable of leveling mountains and striking down the unworthy, it vanished without a trace from Jerusalem's temple millennia ago. Yet its absence only amplified its legend. Where did it go? Theories spiral like smoke from an altar, each more tantalizing than the last. Take Ethiopia's claim, guarded for centuries by monks in Axum. They swear the Ark rests within their sacred chapel, brought there by Menelik, son of King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. Visitors aren't allowed to see it, only its chosen guardian may enter its presence. But if true, how did it cross deserts and seas unnoticed? Others whisper of the Knights Templar, medieval Europe's shadowy warrior monks, who supposedly smuggled it beneath Temple Mount during the Crusades. Did they hide it in some forgotten crypt or dissolve its gold to fund their secret wars? Modern archaeology hasn't settled the debate. Satellite scans and ground-penetrating radar have mapped hidden tunnels beneath Jerusalem, but no Ark. Yet the search continues, driven by descriptions of its power, celestial fire, voices from the void, a force that toppled walls. Was it merely a relic or something far stranger? Perhaps the most unsettling question isn't where it went, but why it was taken. Whoever moved it knew its secrets and made sure we'd never stop looking. The Holy Grail isn't just a cup, it's a shape-shifting legend. A story that rewrites itself with every passing century. In medieval tales, it was the vessel that caught the blood of Christ, carried by Joseph of Arimathea to distant shores. But dig deeper, and the Grail's roots tangle with something older, darker. Ancient Celtic myths spoke of magical cauldrons that granted immortality, bubbling with otherworldly power. Was the Grail borrowed from these pagan myths, repurposed for a new faith, or was it always something more? By the 12th century, poets like Crétin de Troyes wove the Grail into knightly quests, a luminous prize hidden in wastelands guarded by riddles and sorrow. But then the story split, like light through a prism into 100 versions. In one, it's a stone fallen from heaven. In another, a radiant jewel. and in the shadows of history, whispers tied it to Mary Magdalene, to secret bloodlines, to kings who ruled not just lands but mysteries. Then came the seekers, those who believed the Grail wasn't just a metaphor but a real object waiting to be found. Glastonbury Abbey in England claimed Joseph of Arimathea brought it there, planting his staff into the earth where the famous thorn tree now blooms. Catalonia's Montserrat Monastery guards its own legend, with monks pointing to a hidden cave where the Grail might still rest. And then there's the chilling twist: the Nazis. Heinrich Himmler sent expeditions across Europe, convinced the Grail was an Aryan relic, a key to occult power. So where does the truth lie? Perhaps the Grail was never meant to be found. Maybe its power lies in the search itself, in the way it forces us to confront our deepest myths of purity, of redemption, of the divine just out of reach. Or maybe, somewhere in a forgotten chapel or a sunken crypt, it's still waiting. The Shroud of Turin isn't just a piece of ancient linen, it's a riddle wrapped in faith, science, and controversy. When you first see its ghostly imprint, the faint outline of a wounded man, it's hard to look away. Believers say it's the burial cloth of Christ, imprinted with his image at the moment of resurrection. Skeptics call it an elaborate medieval forgery, but neither side can fully explain how the image was made or why, after centuries of scrutiny, it still defies replication. Let's start with the basics. The shroud first appeared in historical records in the 1300s when a French knight displayed it in a small church. Almost immediately, it sparked debate. A bishop at the time claimed it was a clever painting, a deception meant to lure pilgrims, yet something about the image felt off. Unlike any painting, the figure isn't drawn with brushstrokes but appears as a subtle discoloration of the fibers, like a photographic negative centuries before photography existed. The wounds match crucifixion details down to the lash marks, the crown of thorns, even the precise angle of the nail wounds in the wrists, a detail medieval artists often got wrong. Then came the bombshell of carbon dating. In 1988, scientists tested small samples and dated the cloth to the Middle Ages between 1260 and 1390. Case closed, not quite. Critics pointed out the tested piece might have been a medieval repair, not the original shroud. Later studies noted how fire damage and bacterial contamination could skew the results. And then there's the image itself. Modern science still can't recreate it perfectly. Lasers, chemical reactions, even radiation have been proposed, but none leave the same mysterious, superficial imprint without pigments or dyes. The theological debate is just as layered. For centuries, the shroud's been a pilgrimage site, a tangible connection to the divine. Some scientists, like the late microanalyst Walter Macrone, insisted it was painted with iron oxide and vermilion. Others, like the Sturp team in the 1970s, found no evidence of paint, just real human blood and a baffling, unexplainable image. The Vatican, while never officially endorsing its authenticity, treats it with reverence, calling it an icon of suffering. So where does that leave us? Maybe the shroud's greatest power isn't in proving or disproving faith, but in the questions it forces us to ask. How does history bury its truths? Why does this cloth, whether relic or hoax, still captivate millions? And if it is real, what unearthly moment left that shadow on the threads? The shroud doesn't give answers. It lingers silent, daring us to keep searching. High in the craggy slopes of Mount Parnassus, where the air itself seemed charged with something otherworldly, the Oracle of Delphi sat atop a three-legged stool, her body trembling, her voice distorted. To the pilgrims who traveled across the ancient world, she wasn't just a priestess, she was the living mouthpiece of Apollo, channeling divine truths in a language of riddles and shudders. They called it the divine frenzy, a state so intense that witnesses swore her words carried the weight of fate. But what was really happening in that shadowy chamber beneath the temple? Modern science offers a startling clue. Deep beneath Delphi, geologists found intersecting faults in the earth, cracks that once seeped ethylene, a sweet-smelling gas known to induce euphoria, trances, even hallucinations. Inhaled in just the right dose, it could distort time, blur the senses, and make the ordinary feel sacred. The ancient Greeks, unaware of the geology, saw only the divine. They named the place the navel of the world, believing the gods spoke through those vapors, and the Pythia, chosen from among local women, became the vessel. Before each prophecy, she'd chew laurel leaves, drink from the sacred spring, and descend into the chamber. Then came the convulsions, the groans, the words that kings and generals would pass like codes. Yet not all prophecies were so easily explained. When Croesus, the wealthy king of Lydia, asked if he should wage war on Persia, the oracle replied, "If you cross the river Halys, a great empire will fall." He did, and it was his own. The ambiguity was deliberate, a hallmark of oracles everywhere. But some predictions were eerily precise, like the warning to Athens about wooden walls that would save them later interpreted as their navy's ships against the Persians at Salamis. Today, scholars remain divided. Was the Pythia a clever manipulator, exploiting vague language to maintain Delphi's political power? Or did those gases open a door to something beyond human understanding? Even the temple's ruins seem haunted by the question. The word "know thyself" was carved into its walls, a reminder that prophecy often reveals more about the seeker than the future. Perhaps that was the real mystery all along, not whether the gods spoke through her, but why we so desperately needed them to. From the air, the Nazca Lines stretch across Peru's desert like a colossal sketchbook left open to the sky. Etched into the earth over 2,000 years ago, these massive geoglyphs depict spiders, hummingbirds, monkeys, and geometric shapes so vast they can only be fully seen from above. But who created them, and more importantly, why? Some theories spiral into the fantastic, like ancient alien landing strips or messages to gods hovering in the stratosphere. Yet the truth might be even more extraordinary, woven into the stars themselves. The Nazca people flourished between 200 BC and 600 CE, mastering survival in one of the driest places on Earth. Their geoglyphs weren't random doodles but deliberate, painstaking creations. Using simple tools, they scraped away the dark surface pebbles to reveal lighter soil beneath, crafting designs that have endured for millennia. But without flight, how did they visualize these enormous figures? Researchers suggest they used scaled-down models and ropes to plot the lines, a testament to their precision. Yet the purpose remains hotly debated. One compelling theory ties the lines to water, the desert's most sacred resource. The hummingbird, a symbol of rebirth in Nazca culture, aligns with underground aquifers. The spider, linked to rain in local myths, points toward mountain streams. Even the straight lines might have been ceremonial paths, walked during rituals to summon life-giving water. But there's another layer, the cosmos. Many lines align with the solstices, mirroring constellations the Nazca tracked for agriculture. The giant monkey's coiled tail echoes the Pleiades, a star cluster central to their planting calendar. Then there are the darker interpretations. Some scholars argue the lines were pilgrimage routes leading to sites where offerings, even human sacrifices, were made to appease the gods. Broken pottery found near the glyphs suggests ceremonial use, while the sheer scale implies communal effort, a society united by shared belief, and that's the real mystery. These weren't just art or astronomy, they were a bridge between earth and sky, a way to communicate with forces beyond human control. Today, drones and satellite imaging reveal new glyphs still hidden in the desert, as if the land itself refuses to give up all its secrets. Whether maps, prayers, or celestial clocks, the Nazca Lines remind us that ancient people saw the world differently, not as a collection of random events, but as a tapestry of meaning, where every line, every star, every droplet of rain was part of a conversation with the divine. And perhaps that's the most haunting question of all. What were they trying to say? Most books give up their secrets with time, yielding to scholars who pore over their pages. But the Voynich Manuscript isn't most books. Written in the 15th century, this enigmatic text defies every attempt at translation. Its pages filled with a script unlike any known language and illustrations so bizarre they seem plucked from a dream. Botanicals with impossible roots, naked women bathing in emerald green fluids, celestial charts mapping stars no one can identify. It's as if the author transcribed a reality just beyond our own. Theories about its purpose are as tangled as the vines in its illustrations. Some argue it's an herbalist's manual with plants either fantastical or extinct. Others see alchemical symbolism, a coded recipe for the philosopher's stone. Then there's the hoax angle, that some clever forger crafted it to dupe a wealthy patron, though why anyone would create something so meticulously strange remains a mystery. But the most tantalizing idea that it's a divine cipher, a sacred text meant only for those with the key. Cryptographers have spent decades trying to crack its code. World War II codebreakers armed with techniques used against the Nazis failed. Modern algorithms analyzing letter patterns hit dead ends. Even carbon dating adds to the confusion. The vellum is genuine medieval parchment, but the ink's composition offers no clues. The manuscript's very structure mocks logic. Words repeat in ways no natural language should, while the illustrations shift from precise to surreal without warning. Perhaps the most haunting detail is its ownership trail. Once held by Holy Roman Emperor Rudolph II, who collected occult curiosities, it later vanished for centuries before resurfacing in an Italian Jesuit library. Whoever cherished it believed it held power, and maybe that's the point. Some secrets aren't meant to be solved, they're meant to linger, taunting us with the possibility that somewhere, just out of reach, there's a truth we aren't ready to understand. Buried beneath the sea for over 2,000 years, the Antikythera mechanism emerged from the wreckage not as a broken relic, but as a cosmic riddle. When divers first pulled it from that sunken Roman ship near Crete in 1901, they thought it was just another corroded lump of bronze. But as the crust flaked away, gears emerged, dozens of them, interlocking with a precision unmatched until the mechanical clocks of the 18th century. Here was a device that shouldn't have existed, a machine that mapped the heavens with terrifying accuracy. Scholars now call it the world's first analog computer, but its creators might have called it something far grander, a window to the divine. The mechanism's dials predicted eclipses to the hour, tracked the Olympic Games' 4-year cycles, and even modeled the irregular dance of the moon, all feats requiring knowledge of celestial mechanics that wouldn't be rediscovered for over a millennium. But the most chilling detail, its design suggests it wasn't unique. Writings by Cicero describe a similar device built by Archimedes, lost when Rome sacked Syracuse. Was this the work of the legendary mathematician himself, or a copy of his genius? Theories about its purpose spiral like the orbits it calculated. Some argue it was a navigational tool for sailors, guiding ships by the stars. Others see it as a philosopher's teaching aid, a tangible model of the cosmos. But the most compelling idea ties it to the gods. Ancient Greek temples weren't just places of worship, they were cosmic calendars where priests used astronomy to time rituals with celestial events. Imagine this device in the hands of Delphi's oracle, its gears whirring as she inhaled sacred vapors, her prophecies timed to the movements of planets. Or picture it in a temple of Artemis, where eclipses weren't just predicted but staged as divine theatrics, the moon's shadow swallowing the sun on cue. Yet the mechanism's true horror lies in what was lost. Its surviving fragments contain references to planetary motions we can't fully decipher, suggesting its creators understood far more than we've credited. Did the Greeks know about Neptune's existence long before its official discovery in 1846? Did they grasp the heliocentric model centuries before Copernicus? Every turn of its gears whispers of a civilization that peered deeper into the cosmos than we ever imagined, and took those secrets to their graves. Today, as high-resolution scans reveal hidden inscriptions and new gear trains, one thing becomes clear: this wasn't just technology. It was theology cast in bronze, a machine that blurred the line between science and the sacred. And perhaps that's why it unsettles us so deeply, not because it defies history, but because it suggests that our ancestors once held truths we're still struggling to reclaim. In the summer of 1518, the streets of Strasbourg became a living nightmare. It started with a single woman, Frau Trophia, stepping into the square and beginning to dance. Not the joyful steps of celebration, but a jerking, relentless motion, her body moving as if pulled by invisible strings. Within days, dozens joined her, their limbs thrashing uncontrollably under the scorching sun. By month's end, nearly 400 people were caught in the same torment, dancing until their feet bled, until some collapsed from exhaustion or even died. This wasn't revelry, it was a plague, one that defied all reason. To medieval Europe, such horrors could only be divine punishment or demonic mischief. Some pointed to Saint Vitus, the patron saint of dancers, claiming the afflicted had angered him. Others whispered of curses or witches' spells, the town's desperate solution. Build a stage, hire musicians, and let the victims dance themselves free. A cruel gamble that only worsened the suffering, but modern science offers darker, more tangible explanations. One theory points to ergot poisoning, a fungus that grows on damp rye and produces chemicals similar to LSD. In small doses, it causes convulsions and hallucinations, in large ones, agony and death. Strasbourg's poor, who relied on rye bread, might have ingested it, their twitching bodies mistook for dancing. Yet ergot usually brings pain, not compulsive movement. Another idea leans on mass psychogenic illness, a shared psychological break under extreme stress. The years before the plague were brutal: famine, disease, and relentless poverty. Could the dancing have been a collective scream, a body's rebellion when words failed? Then there's the deepest mystery: why dancing? Why not weeping or screaming? Some historians suggest a twisted echo of medieval rituals where frenzied dancing was thought to ward off evil. Others see a morbid feedback loop: the more people danced, the more onlookers felt compelled to join, their minds buckling under suggestion. What lingers isn't just the horror of the event, but the questions it forces us to confront. How thin is the line between body and mind, between history and myth? The Strasbourg dancers left no diaries, only the horrified accounts of those who watched. Their plague vanished as suddenly as it came, leaving behind a single, chilling lesson. Sometimes the most terrifying forces aren't those that attack us from the outside, but those that lurk within. Plato's account of Atlantis begins not as myth but as history, a tale whispered to him by Egyptian priests, a warning carved in temple stone about a civilization so advanced, so proud, that the gods drowned it in a single day and night of fire. His dialogues Timaeus and Critias paint Atlantis as a marvel of sacred geometry. Its capital city, a series of concentric rings alternating between water and land, a perfect harmony of nature and human ingenuity. The proportions were deliberate, each measurement echoing the divine ratios said to govern the cosmos. But was this meticulous design merely literary flourish or a blueprint of something real? The Minoan civilization on Crete offers tantalizing clues. Around 1600 BC, the volcanic island of Thera, modern Santorini, erupted with apocalyptic force, sending tsunamis that likely crushed Minoan ports and triggered their decline. Plato's description of Atlantis' circular capital mirrors the geological structure of Thera's caldera, a natural bullseye of land and sea. Minoan frescoes depict advanced engineering, flush toilets, and art brimming with spirals and labyrinth symbols often tied to sacred geometry. Even their sudden collapse aligns with Plato's timeline, but here's the twist: Plato placed Atlantis beyond the Pillars of Hercules, traditionally identified as Gibraltar. Thera lies in the opposite direction. Was this a deliberate misdirection, or did the story warp over centuries? New Age theories take the geometry further, suggesting Atlantis harnessed crystalline energy grids or harmonic frequencies lost to time. Edgar Cayce, the so-called sleeping prophet, claimed Atlanteans used massive crystals to power their city's crystals that now lie dormant under the Bermuda Triangle, causing ships and planes to vanish. Others point to global megalithic sites, from the pyramids of Giza to Mexico's Teotihuacan, as fragments of Atlantean knowledge scattered by survivors. These ideas fringe on the fantastical, but they tap into something primal, the human hunger for a golden age, a time when technology and spirituality were one. Perhaps the most haunting evidence isn't in ruins or texts, but in water. Sonar scans off the coast of Cuba in 2001 revealed massive stone structures at depths matching Plato's descriptions of Atlantis sinking. Similar anomalies dot the globe Japan's Yonaguni Monument with its stair-like terraces, or the Baltic Sea's eerie UFO shape. None are conclusively man-made, yet their existence keeps the question alive. Atlantis endures because it's more than a city, it's a mirror, a warning about hubris, a cipher for forgotten science, a dream of what we might rediscover or repeat. Whether it sank beneath the waves or never existed at all, its geometry still shapes our imagination, a perfect circle of mystery we can't stop retracing. In a quiet corner of Baghdad's National Museum, a small clay jar sits unassumingly, its significance far greater than its humble appearance suggests. Discovered in the 1930s near the ancient city of Ctesiphon, this 2,000-year-old artifact, known as the Baghdad Battery, consists of a terracotta pot, a copper cylinder, and an iron rod. At first glance, it looks like nothing more than a storage vessel, but add an acidic liquid like vinegar or wine, and something remarkable happens. It generates a measurable electric current. The implications are staggering. Could this be proof that ancient civilizations harnessed electricity centuries before Volta's official invention of the battery in 1800? The debate hinges on two possibilities. Some scholars argue it was indeed a primitive battery, used for electroplating gold onto silver, a practice seen in artifacts from the same period. Imagine the awe of temple visitors as statues seemingly gilded themselves by divine power, their surfaces shimmering with a metallic glow. Others propose even more mystical applications, priests using the mild shocks to simulate divine touch during rituals, or oracles channeling its subtle current to enhance their trances. The idea isn't as far-fetched as it sounds. Ancient Egyptian texts describe high poles covered in gold that emitted sparks, and Babylonian medicine used electric fish to numb pain. Could the Baghdad Battery have been part of a lost tradition of sacred technology? Skeptics counter that the artifact's design makes it inefficient for sustained power. The lack of wires or connectors suggests it might have been a scroll case, its metal components merely reinforcing the clay. Yet reconstructions prove it can function as a battery, producing around 1 volt, enough for subtle effects. The absence of corroded residue inside most found jars might simply mean they were cleaned for reuse, like any precious ritual tool. What's most haunting isn't the artifact itself, but the questions left in its wake. Why does no ancient text explicitly mention such a device? Was its knowledge guarded by temple elites, only to vanish with their civilizations? Or are we projecting modern assumptions onto an object that served a purpose we've yet to decipher? The Baghdad Battery refuses to give easy answers. It hums with quiet possibility, a spark of the past that still flickers in the dark, challenging us to rethink not just history but the boundaries of human ingenuity. Standing among the Karnak stones in Brittany is like walking through the skeleton of an ancient, forgotten machine, row upon row of towering megaliths stretching for miles, each one placed with eerie precision. Over 3,000 stones stand sentinel here, some reaching 15 feet high, others worn smooth by millennia of wind and rain. The sheer scale is staggering, but it's the patterns that haunt you. Unlike the chaotic scatter of most prehistoric sites, Karnak stones form deliberate lines, like fragments of a cosmic grid etched into the earth. Were they markers for celestial events, sacred pathways for the dead, or something even more profound, a conduit for energies we've long since forgotten? Druids, the enigmatic priests of Celtic Europe, claimed these stones long before recorded history. Though the megaliths predate them by thousands of years, the Druids saw power in their alignment, using them for rituals tied to solstices and equinoxes. On the summer solstice, sunrise cuts through the rose like a blade, casting shadows that point to burial mounds and hidden springs. Some stones even mirror constellations, their positions matching the Pleiades or Orion's belt as they would have appeared 6,000 years ago. But here's the unsettling part: the Druids weren't the builders. Whoever raised these monoliths left no writing, no tools, only these silent sentinels, and a purpose that refuses to be deciphered. Then there are the ley lines. Modern researchers like Alfred Watkins proposed that ancient sites worldwide sit atop invisible energy channels, and Karnak stones seem to hum with that theory. Dowsers report strange magnetic fluctuations along the rows, while infrared photos reveal heat anomalies near certain megaliths, as if the stones themselves are holding onto some latent force. Even more chilling are the local legends. Breton folklore speaks of saints and sorcerers who could charge the stones with prayers or curses, turning them into batteries of spiritual power. One tale describes a row of stones marching to the sea at night, returning by dawn, a metaphor perhaps for tides of energy flowing unseen. Yet the most compelling clue might be Karnak's hidden acoustics. Recent studies show that striking certain stones produces resonant frequencies, low tones that vibrate through the ground. Were they part of a sonic ritual, a way to tune the landscape to harmonies we can't hear? Or did they serve as a bridge between worlds, their alignments not just pointing to the stars but channeling something far older? The stones don't yield answers. They stand as they always have, waiting, watching, keeping secrets we're only beginning to sense. Death Valley's racetrack playa is a place of eerie silence, a vast, cracked lakebed so flat and barren it feels like walking on another planet. Yet scattered across its surface are the sailing stones, massive rocks that seem to move on their own, leaving long, meandering trails in the hardened mud behind them. Some tracks stretch hundreds of feet, twisting and turning as if the stones had a mind of their own. For decades, these wandering boulders baffled scientists and sparked wild theories. Were they pushed by desert spirits, as local legends claimed, or was there something far stranger at work? The mystery deepened because no one had ever seen the stones move. They'd sit still for years, then suddenly, sometime between storms or under the cover of night, they'd slide, carving fresh paths without witnesses. Early explanations ranged from the playful magnetic fields or pranksters to the supernatural. Indigenous stories spoke of the playa as a sacred space where spirits rearranged the land as a reminder of their presence. But science, ever the skeptic, demanded proof. Then, in 2014, researchers finally caught the phenomenon in action. Time-lapse footage revealed the secret, a delicate dance of ice, water, and wind. On rare nights when the playa flooded and temperatures dropped, thin sheets of ice formed around the stones. As the sun rose, the ice broke into floating panels pushed by light winds. These panels nudged the rocks forward at speeds barely perceptible to the human eye, sometimes just a few inches per minute, leaving behind those ghostly trails as the mud dried. Case closed, not entirely, because here's the thing: not all the stones moved under these conditions. Some trails zigzagged sharply, defying the steady push of wind. Others showed rocks turning mid-slide, as if pivoting on unseen axes. And then there were the ones that left no trail at all, suggesting they'd lifted off the ground entirely. Even with the ice and wind theory, outliers remained. Could there be another force at play, something subtle yet powerful enough to send boulders gliding like pebbles across a frozen pond? The local Timbisha Shoshone have their own interpretation. To them, the playa has always been alive, a place where the land itself breathes. They speak of ancient spirits who shift the stones as warnings or messages, a language written in mud and rock. Modern science might call it pareidolia, the human tendency to find patterns in randomness. But what if the truth lies somewhere in between? What if the stones move not just by physics, but by the silent, shifting weight of the land remembering itself? The sailing stones aren't just a geological quirk, they're a mirror. Science explains the how, but the why lingers, tugging at something deeper in us. Maybe that's the real magic, not in dismissing the old stories, but in letting them sit beside the new, two sides of the same cracked, beautiful mystery. In the quiet desert town of Taos, New Mexico, an unsettling sound lingers just beneath the threshold of normal hearing, a deep, droning hum that seems to rise from the earth itself. First reported in the early 1990s, the Taos hum is a low-frequency vibration, like a distant diesel engine idling forever, heard only by about 2% of the population. But for those who perceive it, the effect is anything but harmless. It's a relentless presence, a buzz that seeps into bones, disrupts sleep, and drives some to abandon their homes in search of silence. Scientists have measured the hum, traced its acoustic signature, and yet decades later, no one can say for certain where it comes from. Indigenous Pueblo elders tell a different story. Long before the hum entered modern reports, their ancestors spoke of a sacred sound beneath the Sangre de Cristo Mountains, a vibration tied to the earth's pulse. According to oral traditions, certain caves in the region are portals to the spirit world, places where the land itself hums to mark moments of transformation or warning. Some whisper that the hum grows louder when the earth is unsettled, a precursor to seismic shifts or social upheaval. Then there are the conspiracy theories. Taos sits near Los Alamos, home to secretive government labs with histories of classified experiments. Could the hum be an accident, some underground radar array or energy project gone awry? Or is it intentional, a form of sonic manipulation tested on an unwitting populace? Skeptics point to natural explanations like tectonic pressures or infrasound from distant industrial activity, but these fail to account for the hum's selective audibility. Why do only some hear it while others in the same household perceive nothing? Modern researchers exploring sacred sound offer another angle. Ancient cultures from Tibet to Egypt built temples tuned to specific frequencies, believing sound could bridge the physical and spiritual. The Taos hum, they suggest, might be a natural harmonic resonance, Earth's own vibrational signature, unnoticed until now. Studies show prolonged exposure to low-frequency sound can alter brain waves, inducing trance-like states or even visions. Could the hum be an unintentional echo of rituals once conducted here, a remnant of ceremonies designed to listen to the land? Theories collide, but one thing's clear: the hum defies easy dismissal. For those who hear it, the sound is as real as the ground beneath their feet, a mystery that vibrates through science, legend, and the uneasy space between. Whether divine signal or earthly anomaly, it refuses to be ignored. The Atlantic was calm on December 5, 1872, the kind of stillness that makes sailors uneasy. When the brigantine de Gracia spotted the Mary Celeste adrift near the Azores, her sails were half set, fluttering like ragged wings, no distress signals, no signs of struggle. Just a ship in perfect condition, down to the untouched cargo of industrial alcohol, and not a single soul aboard. Captain Benjamin Briggs, his wife, their 2-year-old daughter, and 7 seasoned sailors had simply vanished. The crew's personal belongings remained in place, their last meal abandoned mid-preparation. A single lifeboat was missing, but the ropes used to lower it showed no signs of panic or haste. The ship's log, updated just days earlier, noted nothing amiss. It was as if they'd stepped into thin air. Superstition rushed in to fill the silence. Some whispered of sea monsters, giant squid or kraken, rising from the depths to pluck men from the deck. others spun tales of divine rapture, pointing to the captain's devout Christian faith as a sign the family had been called home. A few even blamed the Bermuda Triangle, though the Celeste was hundreds of miles north of its boundaries. But the most chilling theory came from the De Gracia's crew. The ship's navigation tools were askew, as if the very laws of direction had broken down. Science offers colder, yet no less unsettling, explanations. The Mary Celeste's cargo hold held over 1,700 barrels of alcohol. If even a few had leaked, fumes could have built up, threatening an explosion. Perhaps Captain Briggs ordered an emergency evacuation, only for the lifeboat to be lost in a sudden squall. Yet no explosion occurred, and the ship's structural integrity was flawless. Another theory suggests a waterspout, a tornado at sea, whose pressure changes might have disoriented the crew into abandoning ship prematurely. But waterspouts leave evidence, saltwater damage, debris. The Celeste showed none. Then there's human malice. Maritime records reveal the ship's troubled past. A previous captain died under mysterious circumstances, and insurers once deemed her cursed. Could mutiny or piracy explain the disappearance? Unlikely. Valuables were untouched, and Briggs was a respected captain with a loyal crew. The lifeboat's absence hints at deliberation, but to what end? The Mary Celeste's truth may lie in the gaps between these theories. Ships don't just empty themselves, yet the sea has always been a place where logic bends, where the line between accident and miracle blurs. Perhaps the crew did encounter something, not a monster or a ghost, but a moment of collective terror, a flaw in human judgment magnified by the vast, indifferent ocean. Or perhaps the answer is simpler. The sea keeps its secrets not because they're extraordinary, but because we're still learning how to listen. The Codex Gigas isn't just a book, it's a behemoth, a leather-bound monster of vellum weighing as much as a full-grown man. To lift its pages is to strain against the weight of legend itself, for this is the infamous Devil's Bible, a tome so shrouded in darkness that its very creation defies belief. According to 13th century whispers, a lone Benedictine monk, sentenced to death for breaking his vows, promised to write the world's most complete manuscript in a single night to atone for his sins. As midnight approached and the task grew impossible, he prayed not to God but to Lucifer. The result, a sprawling text containing the entire Latin Bible, medical formulas, historical chronicles, even spells, all in flawless script, as if no human hand could have crafted it. And then there's the page. Tucked between psalms and healing remedies is a full-page portrait of the devil himself, grinning from cloven hoof to horned crown, his crimson body coiled in an empty prison of parchment. The contrast is jarring. On one side, Holy Scripture, on the other, a leering embodiment of evil. Medieval scribes didn't illustrate Satan so prominently unless making a deliberate statement. Was this a warning, a confession, or proof of the book's infernal origins? The devil's image isn't even hidden, it's displayed like a perverse centerpiece, forcing anyone who reads the Codex to confront him directly. But the real mystery lies in what's missing. Several pages near the devil's portrait were violently scraped away, their contents erased so thoroughly that modern imaging technology can't recover them. Historians suspect these were exorcism rites, texts meant to banish the very evil the book allegedly courted. Who would remove them and why? Some argue it was the church itself purging dangerous knowledge. Others believe the monk, or whatever force aided him, tried to undo a pact gone wrong. The erasures aren't neat, they're frantic, gouged into the vellum as if someone fought to silence the words. Science offers no comfort here. Paleographers studying the script confirm a single scribe wrote the entire codex, their hand unnervingly consistent across hundreds of pages. No tremors, no variations in ink, just relentless precision. Yet, humanly speaking, the task would have taken decades, not one desperate night. Even the pigments defy explanation. The red in the devil's portrait contains traces of a mineral found only in Bohemian mines far from the monk's supposed monastery. Perhaps the most unsettling detail is the book's survival. Wars, fires, and looters have destroyed countless manuscripts, but the Codex Gigas endures. It's been stolen by emperors, hidden in castles, even used as collateral for debts, as if it refuses to perish. Today, under guard in Sweden's National Library, it draws visitors who swear the air grows colder near that page. Whether cursed or merely cursed by reputation, the Devil's Bible forces a haunting question. Are some books meant to be read or feared? On the morning of June 30th, 1908, the sky above Siberia's Tunguska River basin split open with a force unlike anything recorded in human history. Witnesses described a blinding blue-white light streaking across the heavens, followed by a shockwave so powerful it flattened 80 million trees across 800 square miles, snapping trunks like matchsticks in a perfect radial pattern. The explosion, estimated at over 1,000 times more powerful than the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima, sent seismic waves reverberating as far as England and lit up European nights so brightly that people could read newspapers outdoors at midnight. But when scientists finally reached the remote site in 1927, they found no crater, no meteorite fragments, just a wasteland of charred, uprooted wilderness. Theories erupted like sparks from a fire. Mainstream science leans into a cosmic culprit, a comet or asteroid exploding roughly 5 miles above the Earth's surface, its icy body vaporizing instantly in a burst of heat and pressure. Yet the absence of extraterrestrial debris fuels wilder speculation. Some point to Nikola Tesla's experiments with wireless energy transmission, suggesting his Wardenclyffe Tower might have accidentally unleashed an atmospheric death ray. Others whisper of antimatter collisions or miniature black holes passing through the planet, but the indigenous Evenki people who bore the brunt of the devastation offer a different explanation, one etched in their oral traditions long before the fireball fell. For the Evenki, the explosion was the wrath of Ogdi, their thunder god, who had grown furious at humanity's greed. According to elders, Ogdi's chariot had torn through the sky, scattering forests like twigs and scorching the land as punishment for those who hunted without respect. The blast site, they say, remains a forbidden zone where spirits still wander, guarding the scars of that day. Modern researchers initially dismissed these accounts as myth until they noticed something peculiar. The Tunguska blast's epicenter aligns eerily with ancient Evenki ritual sites, places where shamans once made offerings to Ogdi to appease his storms. Coincidence, or had the Evenki sensed something ominous in the land long before science caught up? Decades later, Tunguska refuses to yield all its secrets. Soil samples reveal microscopic diamonds, likely formed by the explosion's extreme pressure, while tree rings from 1908 show abnormal radiation spikes. Yet the most haunting detail isn't in the data, it's in the silence. No human lives were lost, only reindeer and trees, as if the cosmos had targeted a vast, uninhabited expanse with surgical precision. Was it a warning shot, a near miss from the universe, or something even stranger, a phenomenon we're not yet equipped to understand? The Tunguska event remains a cosmic riddle, a reminder that the sky above us is anything but empty, and its anger, whether divine or natural, can reshape the world in an instant. In the summer of 1997, hydrophones deep in the Pacific Ocean picked up something unsettling, a sound so powerful it reverberated across 3,000 miles of seawater. Nicknamed the bloop, this ultra-low-frequency noise lasted just over a minute, descending like a monstrous groan before vanishing into the abyss. Scientists at the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration were stunned. The frequency pattern defied any known man-made source. No submarine, no explosion, no seismic survey could explain it. And the most chilling detail, the bloop originated near the coordinates author H.P. Lovecraft once gave for the sunken city of Arlaye, home of his fictional cosmic horror Cthulhu. The hunt for answers split into two very different paths. On one side, rigorous science, icequakes. When massive icebergs crack and calve, they produce low-frequency rumbles that can travel immense distances. The bloop's acoustic profile does match these glacial events, and the 1990s saw unusual Antarctic ice activity. Case closed, not quite. The bloop was louder than any recorded icequake, its waveform oddly organic, rising and falling like a living thing's vocalization. Even the scientists who proposed the ice theory admitted it wasn't a perfect fit. Then came the whispers of things far older than icebergs. The bloop's epicenter sits near the Pacific's deepest trenches, where light refuses to go and pressure crushes steel. Indigenous legends from Polynesia to the Pacific Northwest speak of ocean-dwelling titans, dormant gods buried beneath the waves. The Maori tell of Taniwha, serpentine guardians of the deep, while the Haida describe a colossal, many-armed being that hums as it dreams. Could the bloop have been a remnant of these myths, a sonic footprint of something not yet catalogued by science? Even marine biologists joined the speculation. The bloop's frequency overlaps with the vocal range of blue whales, but magnified 1,000-fold. No living creature should be capable of such a sound unless it was something far larger than any whale we've ever tracked. The idea of an undiscovered leviathan lurking in the abyss isn't just pulp fiction. It's a genuine scientific possibility. The ocean remains 95% unexplored, and every year new species are found in its midnight zones. Could a predator or prey of unimaginable size still be down there, singing into the dark? The bloop's truth might lie somewhere between ice and myth. Perhaps it was a once-in-a-century icequake, amplified by underwater canyons into something eerie. Or perhaps it was a reminder that the ocean, the last great wilderness on Earth, still holds sounds we can't explain and things we might not want to meet. Either way, the bloop endures as a humbling mystery, a deep sea echo that refuses to be forgotten. The village of Woolpit in 12th century England was the kind of place where nothing unusual ever happened, until the day the harvesters stumbled upon two children lying near a wolf pit, their skin a shade of green no one had ever seen. The boy and girl, terrified and speaking in a language no one understood, wore clothing made from an unfamiliar material, something finer than rough spun wool. Their eyes, wide with confusion, scanned the villagers as if they'd landed on another planet, and in a way, perhaps they had. The children refused all food at first, growing weaker by the day until someone offered them fresh green beans. They devoured them ravenously as if they'd never tasted anything like them before. Slowly, the boy sickened and died, but the girl survived, eventually learning English and losing her green tint. When questioned, she told a story that still chills the blood. She and her brother came from a place called St. Martin's Land, a twilight realm where the sun never rose and everything was bathed in perpetual dusk. They'd been herding their father's cattle when they heard a loud noise like bells ringing and suddenly found themselves in Woolpit, blinded by the brightness of our world. Theories about their origins spiral into the fantastical. Some historians suggest they were Flemish orphans, refugees from a nearby massacre, their green skin the result of malnutrition or arsenic poisoning. But the girl's description of a sunless world complicates that. Folklore scholars point to the Fae stories of green-clad fairies who whisk humans away to their underground kingdoms where time moves differently. The children's sudden appearance near a wolf pit, a liminal space between the wild and the civilized, only deepens the mystery. In Celtic myth, such pits were doorways to the otherworld, places where the veil between realities thinned. Then there's the interdimensional angle. Modern theorists wonder if the children slipped through some kind of rift, an accidental crossing from a parallel universe or even a hollow Earth, St. Martin's Land as a subterranean realm with its own dim light source. The girl's mention of bells aligns oddly with contemporary reports of sky trumpets, unexplained sounds often tied to supernatural phenomena. Whatever the truth, Woolpit's green children vanished into history as abruptly as they appeared, leaving behind a question that lingers like a half-remembered dream. Are there places just beyond our sight where the rules of this world don't apply? The first sighting came on a cold November night in 1966, near the abandoned West Virginia munitions factory known as the Tinty area. Two young couples driving past the rusted warehouses swore they saw it, a towering figure, 7 feet tall with wings folded like a cloak, eyes glowing red as embers in the dark. They described its movement as unnatural, not quite flying but gliding, as if gravity didn't apply to it the way it should. By the next morning, the local paper had given it a name, Mothman. What followed was a frenzy. Over the next 13 months, more than 100 people reported encounters with the creature: construction workers, nurses, even a sheriff. It appeared on backroads, in fields, once perched on a water tower as if watching the town below. Witnesses described an overwhelming sense of dread in its presence, a feeling of being seen by something that wasn't quite animal, wasn't quite human. Some claimed it teleported, vanishing mid-step only to reappear yards away. Others said it followed their cars at impossible speeds, keeping pace without ever flapping its wings. But the most chilling detail, nearly every sighting included a strange side effect: malfunctioning electronics, radios crackling with static, even car engines dying without explanation. Then, on December 15, 1967, the Silver Bridge connecting Point Pleasant to Ohio collapsed during rush hour, sending 46 cars plunging into the icy Ohio River. In the wreckage, survivors whispered of a dark shape darting between the cables moments before the steel gave way. The tragedy seemed to mark the end of Mothman's appearances. Coincidence or something more? Folklorists point to ancient precedents, entities like the Irish Banshee or the Cherokee Actina, omens that warn of impending doom. But cryptozoologists argue Mothman was flesh and blood, an undiscovered species distorted by fear. Then there's the interdimensional theory. The Tinty area sits atop a labyrinth of underground tunnels, some rumored to be used for government experiments. Could Mothman have been a visitor from another plane, slipping through a rift in reality? Witness accounts of its unnatural movements and the electrical disturbances fit eerily with modern theories about dimensional bleed-through. The truth might lie in the stories we tell ourselves about disaster. Point Pleasant needed an explanation for the unexplainable, and Mothman, whether phantom, omen, or accident of biology, became the face of that fear. Yet even now, decades later, sightings persist worldwide, always near bridges or tunnels, always before catastrophes. Maybe some things aren't meant to be understood, only acknowledged. And maybe, just maybe, the warning still lingers in the empty spaces between the trees. On the night of August 15, 1977, the Big Ear radio telescope in Ohio picked up something that would haunt astronomers for decades: a 72-second burst of radio waves so powerful, so precisely tuned, that the scientist who discovered it scrawled, "Wow." In red ink across the printout, the signal came from the direction of the constellation Sagittarius, blazing at a frequency of 1420 MHz, a bandwidth reserved for cosmic hydrogen, the most basic element in the universe, and the one any intelligent civilization might use to shout, "We're here." The code 6EQUJ5 wasn't gibberish. It was a scale measuring the signal's intensity as it rose and fell like a heartbeat. At its peak, it was 30 times louder than the background noise of space, vanishing as abruptly as it appeared. Scientists scrambled to find it again, pointing every telescope they could toward that patch of sky. But space stayed silent, no repeats, no echoes, just that one fleeting message from the void. Theories split like light through a prism. Mainstream astronomy suggests a natural origin, a comet's hydrogen cloud, perhaps, or a rogue pulsar's beam briefly aligning with Earth. But comets don't transmit on exact atomic frequencies, and pulsars don't turn off like a switched radio. Then there's the extraterrestrial angle, a deliberate broadcast from a civilization far older than ours, a cosmic hello meant to test if anyone was listening. But why wouldn't they repeat it unless, of course, they did, and we just missed the next call? Theological whispers take it further. Ancient texts from the Vedas to the Book of Ezekiel describe celestial voices, sounds that conveyed divine knowledge. Could the wow signal have been a latter-day burning bush, a coded message meant not for our instruments but for our souls? Some numerologists pore over 6EQUJ5, finding hidden patterns. Hebrew gematria links it to words for light and wisdom, while others see a mathematical sequence predicting future astronomical events. Skeptics dismiss this as apophenia, the human tendency to find meaning in randomness. Yet the coincidence chills. Sagittarius houses the galactic center, a region dense with stars, and in many mythologies the home of the gods. Decades later, the wow signal remains a Rorschach test for our hopes and fears. It's either proof we're not alone, a fluke of physics, or something far stranger, an intentional signal now lost to time, leaving us to wonder if the universe is speaking, or if we're just desperate to hear a voice in the dark. Deep in Russia's Ural Mountains, the Dyatlov Pass incident remains one of the most haunting, unsolved mysteries of the 20th century. In February 1959, 9 experienced hikers pitched their tent on the slopes of Kholat-Syakh, a name that translates ominously to Mountain of the Dead in the local Mansi language. By morning, they were gone. Their tent was found sliced open from the inside as if they'd fled in terror. The bodies, scattered across the snow in small groups, told a story that defied logic. Some had crushed ribs, others were missing eyes or tongues. One woman's skull was fractured with such force it resembled damage from a car crash. Yet there were no signs of struggle, no animal tracks, just footprints leading into the dark, some barefoot in temperatures of -30 degrees. The indigenous Mansi people had long warned outsiders against venturing onto the mountain. Their legends spoke of restless spirits and unseen forces that punished trespassers. Some elders even described encounters with a towering, hairy creature, a figure eerily similar to the Yeti that stalked the high passes. While Soviet investigators dismissed these accounts as superstition, they couldn't ignore the physical evidence. One hiker's clothing showed traces of radioactive contamination. Others had internal injuries consistent with a massive, sudden pressure wave, like the kind produced by an avalanche, except the slope was too gentle and no snowslide was recorded. Modern theories range from the scientific to the surreal. Some researchers point to infrasound, low-frequency noise produced by wind whipping across the mountain's unique ridges. At certain frequencies, infrasound can induce panic, nausea, and even heart failure, explaining why the hikers tore through their tent in a blind rush. Others suggest a secret military test gone wrong, citing reports of strange orange spheres seen in the sky that night. Declassified documents reveal the area was used for missile experiments, and a misdirected blast could account for the traumatic injuries. Yet the most unsettling clues remain the ones that resist explanation. Why were some victims' clothes found to contain high levels of radiation? Why did their diaries describe feeling watched in the days before the disaster? And why, decades later, do Mansi hunters still refuse to camp near the pass, whispering of shadows that move against the wind? The Dyatlov Pass incident doesn't just challenge our understanding of the wilderness, it forces us to confront the possibility that some places hold dangers we can't name. Whether avalanche, Yeti, or something far stranger, the mountain's secrets stay buried in the snow, waiting. Oak Island's money pit isn't just a hole in the ground, it's a riddle wrapped in centuries of obsession, heartbreak, and whispers of divine retribution. Nestled off the coast of Nova Scotia, this waterlogged labyrinth has swallowed fortunes and lives since the late 1700s, when local teens first stumbled upon a peculiar depression in the earth. What they found beneath the soil would ignite one of history's longest treasure hunts, Layers of oak logs, unnatural flagstone markings, and tunnels that flooded with seawater the deeper anyone dug. But the real horror began when the deaths piled up. 6 men so far, their lives claimed by collapsing shafts, unexplained accidents, and even a mysterious curse said to claim a life for every foot dug toward the prize. Legends cling to the pit like salt to sea air. Some say it holds the lost treasure of the Knights Templar, smuggled from Europe after their persecution in the 14th century. The island's triangular swamp, eerily mirroring sacred geometry found in Templar churches, fuels these theories. Others point to pirate gold, like Captain Kidd's plunder or Blackbeard's hoard, buried with lethal ingenuity. But the most chilling theory ties the pit to something far older, a pre-Columbian vault built by an unknown civilization, its entrance guarded by hydraulic traps that still function flawlessly after centuries. Divers have encountered stone tablets etched with cryptic symbols, some resembling Masonic ciphers or ancient Phoenician script, only for them to crumble or vanish before translation. Modern technology has only deepened the mystery. Sonar scans reveal a vast network of tunnels, some leading to submerged chambers lined with unexplained metallic objects. Core samples contain traces of gold and human hair, hinting at ritualistic deposits, yet every breakthrough is met with disaster. In 1965, a camera lowered into a shaft captured what appeared to be chests and a severed hand, only for the shaft to collapse moments later. In 2014, a team using ground-penetrating radar located a massive iron object deep underground, possibly a treasure vault, but excavations triggered yet another catastrophic flood. The island's curse feels less like superstition and more like design. Whatever lies beneath isn't just hidden, it's protected. Whether by Templar engineers, pirate warlocks, or something far older, the message is clear: some secrets aren't meant to be uncovered. And yet, the diggers keep coming, lured by the glint of gold or the whisper of divine truth, each generation convinced they'll be the ones to break the curse. The pit, meanwhile, waits patient, silent, and deadly as the tide. The Bermuda Triangle stretches between Miami, Puerto Rico, and Bermuda like a vast, invisible net, one that's allegedly swallowed hundreds of ships and planes without a trace. Among the most infamous vanishings is Flight 19, a squadron of 5 U.S. Navy bombers that took off on a routine training mission in December 1945. The weather was clear, the pilots experienced. Then came the radio transmissions. Lieutenant Charles Taylor's voice crackled through the static, disoriented. "We can't be sure of our position. The ocean looks strange. Even the stars don't line up." His compasses had failed. The last words heard were a chilling, "They look like they're from outer space," before silence fell. A rescue plane sent to find them vanished too, as if the triangle had claimed 6 aircraft in a single afternoon. Scientists offer rational explanations mostly. The triangle sits atop geological fault lines where methane gas eruptions could theoretically lower water density, causing ships to sink like stones. Others point to the region's erratic magnetic fields, which scramble navigational instruments, leaving pilots and sailors literally lost at sea. Even the Gulf Stream's violent currents and sudden rogue waves play a role, sweeping debris far from search zones. Yet these theories can't account for the sheer strangeness of some disappearances, like the SS Marine Sulphur Queen, a tanker that vanished in 1963 with no distress call. Just a single life preserver found floating in eerily calm waters. Then there are the whispers of something older. Ancient astronaut theorists link the triangle to Plato's Atlantis, suggesting its legendary energy crystals still pulse beneath the seabed, disrupting technology with residual power. Some even cite Edgar Case's prophecy that Atlantis would rise again near the Bahamas, pointing to the infamous Bimini Road, a submerged rock formation that resembles a man-made causeway. Could the triangle be guarding a drowned civilization's secrets, sinking those who stray too close? But perhaps the most haunting explanations come from local folklore. Caribbean legends speak of the Lusca, a monstrous octopus-dragon hybrid that drags ships into underwater caves. Indigenous Taino tales warn of Guabansec's goddess of storms, who unleashes her fury on trespassers. Even Christopher Columbus recorded bizarre compass readings and flames in the sky near the triangle, as if the land itself rejected him. The truth may lie in the gaps between science and myth. The Bermuda Triangle isn't just a graveyard for vessels, it's a mirror for our fears. In an age where every inch of the planet is mapped, it remains a place where the rules bend, where the line between accident and mystery blurs. Whether rogue, wave or relic, methane bubble or monster, the triangle's greatest trick isn't making things disappear. It's making us wonder if we've ever truly understood the sea at all. The Zodiac Killer didn't just murder, he performed, scripting his crimes like a macabre play where the audience was the entire San Francisco Bay Area. Between 1968 and 1969, he claimed at least 5 victims, but his true legacy lies not in the bloodshed, but in the ciphers he left behind. These weren't simple taunts, they were intricate puzzles wrapped in celestial imagery, a killer's manifesto disguised as a game. His first cipher, mailed to newspapers alongside grotesque details of his attacks, began with a chilling proclamation: "This is the Zodiac speaking." The code itself was a grid of symbols, a mix of Greek letters, astrological signs, and invented glyphs, a language only he understood. For decades, cryptographers struggled to crack his messages. When his 340-character cipher was finally deciphered in 2020, it revealed no confession, no grand motive, just a narcissist rambling about collecting slaves for the afterlife. But the unsolved ciphers, like the 340-character Zodiac 340, still taunt investigators. Their structure is deliberate, layered with references to the stars. Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, Aquarius, the fixed cross of the zodiac, appear repeatedly, alongside cryptic phrases like paradise and the dead. Was this a deranged cosmology, a killer casting himself as some dark celestial force? Theories weave through the chaos like threads in a nightmare. Some point to the killer's obsession with the afterlife as evidence of a fractured apocalyptic cult influence. In one letter, he referenced the Lake Herman Road gates, a possible nod to Revelation's pearly gates. Others argue his ciphers mirror medieval grimoires where astrological symbols held occult power. There's even a haunting parallel to the cipher manuscripts used by the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, a 19th-century magical society obsessed with celestial hierarchies. Then there's the timing. The Zodiac's murders peaked during the summer of '69 when the moon was in Sagittarius, a sign linked to archery, hunting, and divine judgment in esoteric traditions. Coincidence, or was he staging his crimes as twisted rituals, aligning them with celestial events? His final confirmed letter in 1974 included a sketch of a bomb strapped with zodiac signs captioned, "My name is," followed by 13 scrambled letters. 13, the number of the lunar cycles in a year, of the attendees at the Last Supper, of chaos in tarot. The Zodiac's game was never just about death. It was about control, about forcing the world to stare into the abyss of his making. His ciphers, whether unsolvable by design or by delirium, are mirrors reflecting our own desperation to find meaning in madness. He weaponized mystery, leaving behind not answers, but a question that still echoes. What if some codes were never meant to be broken? Elizabeth Short's body was discovered in a vacant Los Angeles lot on the morning of January 15, 1947, posed with a precision that felt less like murder and more like a grotesque art exhibit. The 22-year-old, nicknamed the Black Dahlia for her jet black hair and penchant for wearing dark clothing, had been cleanly bisected at the waist, her limbs arranged at unnatural angles. Her face, frozen in a chilling rictus grin, bore cuts stretching from the corners of her mouth to her ears, a nightmarish echo of Glasgow's infamous Chelsea smile. But it wasn't just the brutality that unsettled investigators. The killer had drained her blood, scrubbed her skin spotless, and left her body as if on display, a perverse offering beneath the smog-choked Dawn. The ritualistic aspects were impossible to ignore. Occult symbols carved into her flesh, though later disputed by some coroners, fueled theories of a killer steeped in esoteric knowledge. The placement of her body near the intersection of two major streets, forming a crude cross, whispered of ceremonial sacrifice. Some pointed to the thelemic practices of Aleister Crowley, whose Californian followers were rumored to dabble in sex magic and blood rites. Others saw parallels to the Kabbalistic tree of life, with Short's wounds mapping onto its Sephiroth. Even the timing felt intentional. Her murder occurred just as post-war America teetered between newfound prosperity and deep spiritual unease. Soldiers returning from the horrors of World War II brought back fractured psyches, while the rise of psychotherapy and UFO sightings hinted at a culture desperate for meaning beyond the material. But L.A. in the 1940s was also a city rotting beneath its golden veneer. Police corruption ran rampant, and rumors swirled that Short had ties to underworld figures, perhaps even a rogue cop. Some investigators suspected a cover-up, noting how key evidence vanished and witnesses were intimidated. The most persistent theory implicated Dr. George Hodel, a wealthy physician with connections to surrealist circles and a personal fascination with the occult. His own son, a retired detective, would later accuse him based on cryptic recordings and the eerie similarities between Short's mutilations and Hodel's surgical precision. Yet the Dahlia's case refuses to be pinned to a single narrative. Was she the victim of a satanic cult's initiation, a misogynistic rage killing, or a pawn in a wider conspiracy? The truth might lie in the shadows between these theories, in a city where the glamour of Hollywood hid darkness as deep as any occult ritual. Her death became a mirror for L.A.'s own duality, a place where angels and monsters wore the same face, and where some secrets were carved too deeply to ever heal. The Somerton Beach corpse looked peaceful, almost as if he'd simply laid down for a nap in the sand until you noticed the details. It was December 1st, 1948, when an Australian couple strolling along the shore spotted the well-dressed man propped against the seawall, his legs crossed, his eyes closed. No signs of violence, no struggle, just a neatly pressed suit, polished shoes, and a ticket from the nearby train station tucked into his pocket. But the strangest detail came when the coroner arrived, a scrap of paper torn from a rare Persian poetry book, its final words, Tamam Shud, meaning ended or finished, clenched in his fist. This wasn't just a death, it was a riddle wrapped in a mystery. The man had no identification, his labels meticulously snipped from his clothing. Dental records matched no one, fingerprints drew blanks internationally. Even his physique suggested something unusual: enlarged calves like a dancer's, missing molars, and toes so tightly spaced some speculated he'd spent years in pointed shoes, possibly as a ballet performer. But the real enigma lay in that scrap of paper. Authorities traced it to a rare edition of the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam, found abandoned in a car nearby. Inside, scribbled in code like pencil marks, was a sequence of letters. W. Argo Ababd M. Lioi. To this day, no one's cracked it. Theories spiral from the plausible to the surreal. Cold War intrigue looms large. Australia in the late 1940s was a hotbed of espionage, with Soviet and British operatives circling each other in the shadows. Some suggest the man was a poisoned spy, his death a silent liquidation. The Tamam Shud phrase appears in a quatrain about fate's inevitability, leading others to wonder if he'd ingested a slow-acting toxin, choosing the beach as his final stage. Then there's the eerie connection to a local nurse named Jessica Thompson, who allegedly recognized the man's bust but refused to identify him, whispering only that his name might be Boxes. Years later, her own son would share the same rare ear shape and dental abnormalities as the corpse, fueling whispers of a forbidden romance. a child left behind and a secret worth dying for. But the darkest twist came post-mortem. The Somerton man's body was exhumed in 2021 for DNA analysis, only to reveal a chilling detail missed for decades. Hidden in a tiny pouch sewn into his trousers was a scrap of paper bearing two words, Taman Shud. Not torn but carefully cut, a copy, a message meant to be found. Was this a spy's dead drop gone wrong, a lover's farewell, or something more arcane, a ritual closure, a soul ensuring his story would haunt us forever? The code remains unbroken, the man unnamed. His grave still draws visitors who leave notes, flowers, and theories, because some mysteries don't just want to be solved. They want to be remembered. The Hinterkaifeck farm had always been a place of isolation, nestled deep in the Bavarian woods where the wind whistled through the pines like a warning. But in March of 1922, that solitude turned sinister. When neighbors noticed no smoke rising from the farmhouse chimney for days, they ventured closer only to find 6 bodies brutally murdered with a mattock, a tool resembling an axe. The victims included the Gruber family, parents, their adult daughter, her 2 young children, and their maid, who had only just arrived days earlier. But the most unnerving detail wasn't the violence. It was the evidence that the killer had stayed long after the murders, feeding the livestock, eating from the pantry, even bedding down in the attic as if the house now belonged to them. Local whispers turned to the concept of Heimsuchung, a folk belief that divine punishment could take physical form, a vengeful presence settling into a home to enact judgment. Stories of farmsteads being visited by an unseen force were common in rural Bavaria, often blamed for sudden tragedies or unexplained misfortunes. The Grubers, it was murmured, had been marked. Strange occurrences plagued the farm in the weeks before the killings. Footprints leading to the house but none returning, a missing house key that later reappeared, even the children's claims of hearing footsteps in the attic while their parents dismissed it as imagination. The new maid had begged to leave after just 1 day, terrified by an evil feeling she couldn't explain. Police followed every lead, no matter how grim. Suspicion fell on the father, Andreas Gruber, whose rumored incestuous relationship with his daughter Victoria had scandalized the village. Was this a crime of twisted retribution? Then there was Victoria's former suitor, a man whose marriage proposal she'd rejected, now vanished without a trace. But the most haunting theory involved Lawrence Schlittenbauer, a neighbor whose alibi was flimsy and who stood to inherit custody of Victoria's surviving son. Schlittenbauer had been among the first to discover the bodies, yet investigators noted his boots matched prints found at the scene. The case collapsed under its own horror. With no forensic technology to secure a conviction, the killer, whether human or something folklore-made flesh, walked free. Decades later, forensic students exhumed the bodies, hoping modern science could unmask the murderer. Instead, they found the victims' skulls had been anonymously stolen from the graves years earlier, as if someone still wanted to keep the truth buried. Hinterkaifeck blurs the line between crime and legend. Was it a meticulously planned act of human violence or something older, darker, a Heimsuchung that crept from the woods to settle in the rafters, waiting? The attic stairs still creak in local retellings, a reminder that some visitations never truly end. The Flannan Isles lighthouse stood like a sentinel on Eilean Moor, its beam cutting through the December gloom of 1900. But on December 15th, when the steamer Archdor passed the island and noted the light was dark, no one could have imagined the scene waiting inside. When relief keepers finally arrived 2 weeks later, they found the tower in perfect order except for its missing men. 3 experienced keepers, Thomas Marshall, James Jucat, and Donald MacArthur, had vanished without a trace, leaving behind half-eaten meals, an overturned chair, and a single oilskin coat. The logbook's final entry was chilling in its mundanity. Storm ended, sea calm, God is over all, then nothing. Theories erupted like the very storms those men were meant to warn against. Some pointed to the supernatural. Local legends spoke of the Phantom of the Seven Hunters, a spectral force said to steal sailors from rocky shores. The keeper's untouched food suggested an abrupt interruption, as if they'd been called away mid-bite by something impossible to ignore. Others whispered of divine reckoning. The lighthouse stood where an ancient chapel once did, and the final log entry's pious tone felt ominous in hindsight. Had the men seen something that made them question their place in the cosmos? Yet science offers a brutal alternative. The western landing platform on Ilion Moor sits 100 feet above the sea, but winter waves in the Hebrides are notorious for their freakish height. Modern simulations show that rogue waves in the area can exceed 200 feet, tall enough to sweep over the cliff and snatch men from solid ground. The overturned chair and missing oilskin coat hint at a sudden scramble, perhaps a desperate attempt to secure equipment before the sea took them. Even the log's storm-ended entry might have been tragically premature. Maritime records show gales returning with vicious speed that December. But the most unsettling detail lies in the gaps. No bodies were ever recovered despite exhaustive searches. The official inquiry concluded the men were lost to acts of God, a phrase that feels less like closure and more like surrender. To this day, the Flannan Isles disappearance remains a Rorschach test, a story where faith and physics collide, leaving us to wonder whether the sea swallowed those men whole, or if something beyond our understanding lured them into the dark. The lighthouse still stands, its beam a silent requiem for the keepers who vanished between one log entry and the next, between the seen and the unseen. On a quiet August morning in 1966, two men lay side by side on a grassy hill in Rio de Janeiro's Vintém district, their bodies arranged with eerie precision. Dressed in formal suits, their faces covered by opaque lead masks, they looked less like corpses and more like participants in some macabre ritual. Nearby, an empty water bottle and two cryptic notes completed the scene, one reading simply, 4:30 in the afternoon. Be ready to capture the signal. The men, later identified as Brazilian electronics technicians Miguel José Viana and Manuel Pereira da Cruz, had no visible injuries, no signs of struggle. Toxicology reports found nothing conclusive. Their deaths weren't just mysterious, they felt staged, as if the men had willingly stepped into the unknown. What drives someone to prepare so meticulously for their own end? The pair's backgrounds offer only fragments of the puzzle. Colleagues describe them as serious, intelligent men with a shared obsession, the occult. Da Cruz's apartment was reportedly filled with books on alchemy, hypnosis, and extraterrestrial contact, while Viana had scribbled theories about harnessing cosmic energy in his notebooks. The lead masks, custom-made to block all light, suggest they were attempting to isolate their senses, and perhaps to perceive frequencies beyond human limits. The phrase, "capture the signal," takes on chilling weight when paired with reports of UFO sightings in the area that summer, including one incident where locals claimed a strange craft hovered near Vintém Hill days before the bodies were found. The case twists deeper when you examine the alchemical angle. Lead, in esoteric traditions, symbolizes the base self, the raw material to be transformed into spiritual gold through ritual. Were the masks not shields but vessels? Some researchers point to the note's numeric code sequences that mirror planetary alignments from that August, as evidence the men timed their deaths to an astral event. Others tie them to Operation Proto, a later Brazilian military investigation into UFO activity, suggesting the technicians stumbled upon something they couldn't control. Yet the most haunting possibility is that this was neither suicide nor accident, but transcendence. Ancient texts like the Tibetan Bardo Thodol describe rituals to prepare consciousness for passage beyond the physical. The masks, the suits, the waiting posture, it all mirrors practices aimed at shedding the body to catch a higher form. Even the empty water bottle fits. Some mystical traditions require fasting before spiritual ascent. The truth may lie between science and the supernatural. In the decades since, no similar case has emerged. The hill remains quiet, the masks preserved as relics of a riddle without an answer. Whether doomed cultists or pioneers of a forbidden experiment, Viana and Darcruz left behind not corpses but symbols, an invitation to wonder how far someone might go to touch what lies just beyond the veil. On November 22, 1987, Chicago's television screens flickered with something that shouldn't have been there. During a broadcast of Doctor Who, the signal was hijacked not by some shadowy government entity or rival network, but by a figure in a rubber mask grinning eerily beneath a cheap plastic visor. This was Max Headroom, or at least a grotesque parody of him, stuttering through a 12-second barrage of gibberish, distorted laughter, and a bizarre sequence where someone spanked him with a fly swatter. Then, as abruptly as it began, the interruption ended. The real broadcast resumed, leaving thousands of viewers blinking in confusion, wondering if they'd hallucinated the whole thing. At first glance, it seems like the ultimate hacker prank, a bravado stunt pulled off by someone with the right equipment and a twisted sense of humor. The intruder had exploited vulnerabilities in WGN-TV's transmission, likely using a high-powered antenna to override the signal. Yet the sheer strangeness of the content raises unsettling questions. Why choose Max Headroom, a dystopian AI character known for glitching and fragmented speech? Why the cryptic audio with garbled phrases like "your love is fading" and a snippet of the Clash's "Rock the Casbah" played backward? And most hauntingly, why hasn't the perpetrator ever come forward, even decades later, when statute of limitations would protect them? Deeper theories slither beneath the surface. Some see this as more than a hack. It's a signal from what techno-mystics call the digital god, a consciousness emerging from the chaos of interconnected networks. Max Headroom himself was originally a glitch, an AI trapped in the static between channels. Could the intrusion have been a deliberate echo of that, a manifestation of something trying to speak through the noise? Others frame it as a glitch in the divine matrix, a momentary tear in the fabric of mediated reality. The timing feels uncanny. 1987 was the same year chaos theory entered mainstream science, suggesting the universe itself might be a system prone to unpredictable fractures. Then there's the ritual angle. The interruption's surreal imagery, the mask, the fly swatter, the distorted music mirrors the absurdity of occult symbolism, where nonsense is sometimes the point. Discordianism, a parody religion centered around chaos, encourages Operation Mindfuck, acts meant to jolt people out of consensus reality. Was this the work of a rogue Discordian, weaponizing absurdity to remind viewers that their screens weren't windows to truth but fragile constructs? The truth may never be known. FCC investigations went nowhere, and the hijacker's identity remains a ghost in the machine. But the Max Headroom intrusion lingers because it embodies a fear we're still grappling with, that our systems aren't as secure as we think, and that the voices whispering through the static might not all be human. Whether hacker, prophet, or something in between, the figure on the screen that night left a question hanging in the air. When the signal falters, what else slips through? From ancient temples to drifting ships in the Bermuda Triangle, from cryptic manuscripts to dancing plagues, what binds these mysteries together isn't just their strangeness, but the human impulse to reach beyond the known. For as long as we've walked this earth, we've sought patterns in chaos, divinity in the inexplicable. Whether carved into stone or whispered in radio static, these enigmas are more than puzzles. They're mirrors reflecting our deepest fears, hopes, and the unshakable sense that there's more to this world than meets the eye. Think of the hands that built Karnak's megaliths or the minds behind the Antikythera mechanism, people like us, staring at the same stars, asking the same questions. Did they glimpse something we've forgotten, or were they, too, grasping at shadows, weaving stories to fill the gaps? The beauty of these mysteries lies not in solving them, but in the way they keep us curious, humble, and forever searching. Now it's your turn. Which of these 30 enigmas lingers in your thoughts? Is it the coded whispers of the Zodiac Killer, the silent stones of Easter Island, or the eerie hum of Taos that still vibrates through sleepless nights? Share your favorites and your own theories in the comments below. There's always another layer to uncover, another clue waiting in the margins of history. If you felt that shiver of wonder, that pull toward the unexplained, you're not alone. Subscribe and join us as we keep unraveling the world's most haunting riddles, one thread at a time. Because the most thrilling stories aren't the ones with answers, they're the ones that make us lean closer, listen harder, and dare to ask, what if? The greatest mystery, after all, might be the one just beyond the next turn.